Awesome. All right, guys. Well, here we go. So welcome to podcast number 3 for Liv Balanced. My name is Olivia Ash, or Liv, and we are here to talk with Brooke Bampton of Twig and Antler. Say hi to everybody. And we are here with Alison Stastny of Spitfire July. And I am super excited because as I was joking with them, I'm a fangirl. And for those of you who know me real closely, that word doesn't normally come out of my mouth, but I love fashion. I love earrings. And these two ladies are producing some wonderful artwork, first of all. And I've had the pleasure to be able to see them go over the last 15 months or so, go from beautiful art to even more creative. And I think that that's probably because of the pandemic and being pressured into having to focus. And we'll talk about that today. So welcome. We hope that those of you watching and ladies that we're here to just have some real talk about what it means to be an artist, what it means to be a woman, what it means to own your own business, what it means to do all the things all the time. And we might have some challenging discussions, but the point here is to have a discussion because those who are watching and who are listening may be starting their own business. They may be just fans and love and want to know more about you and what you do because things have grown, and that's an awesome thing when it comes to business. So with that, I'm going to throw out some questions, and I am me and a teacher. I've already prepared questions because I'm that nerd. That just helps guests here on Liv Balanced. And of course, as we go through, guys, the whole point from my perspective here with Liv Balanced, I created Liv Balanced because I wanted to share things that were important to me and about art, fashion, culture, practicing mental health and mental wellness, and realizing that art and what we create can help us manage those things in our lives. And so that's what we're here today to do. And to remember the balance is not a destination. It is literally sometimes an hour at a time or a minute, depending upon the situation. So with that, welcome, ladies. Okay, and there will be some music overlaying this. Okay, so I'm going to dive in here with an introduction for those of you who, remember, we have viewers who may not know you, who may be watching on YouTube, or you send this link out. So a short introduction, tell me more about you, and we'll start with Brooke.
Hi, I am Canadian, first of all, I guess, because, yeah, so I live in the north of this particular continent. I was born in a place called Winnipeg, Manitoba. Look it up on the atlas if you are so inclined. I am a person of mixed heritage, meaning I am a Métis person. I identify as mixed ancestry, Indigenous and French Canadian. I have a BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from the Alberta University of the Arts. I also do ultrasound as my real job or other job, which I'm sure we'll get to after. Yeah. And I've been making art pretty much my entire life. And yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
That's need to know. And you have fantastic organization, actually, though you may not think about it. And if you're anything like me, I think it's worse, but other people are like, that's awesome. So what do you have behind you, Brooke?
Well, honestly, just like tubs of things. There's just some earrings stocked up here, some supplies over here. This is just like I don't know what this is. This is like a mess of different plastics and recycled materials that I use and hopefully will use. I don't know. I can't throw them away because it's so much plastic. So yeah, I put them in this thing.
That's okay. And then I'm similar in that sense that I have to I put it on one corner and then I take it somewhere I know I can recycle it. So yeah, that's all right. Awesome. Well, thank you for the intro. All right, Alison, it's your turn. What do we need to tell me about you?
Oh boy.
What do we absolutely need to know?
Oh boy. I am from Lincoln, Nebraska, which half the people I don't even think Nebraska is real. Surprise it is. Lincoln is about dead center in the US. So we're about the only city in Nebraska that isn't just farm and cows and corn. So it's a college town with a very rural vibe, and I didn't realize that's not how everyone else grew up. So I think that's definitely affected everything. I went to school in Lincoln here. I graduated with a psychology degree because it's interesting, and then I was too scared to do grad school, and I was too scared to do an art degree. So I'm just not using my degree in my day-to-day life. Yeah, like you said, we'll get to why. Is it the other job or is it the real job? Like that kind of dynamic.
The third job. I mean, this is like, I still have technically 3 jobs.
Yeah, you start counting.
A job?
Yeah.
A job.
Yeah.
Jobs. The thing you want to do, the thing you must do until you get to the point where the thing you can do what you want to do.
Basically. Yeah.
Which happened, I think. So thank you both. Thank you, Alison, for that. And I think that also really important here, because I'm sitting here sparkling with some dangly earrings Alison made, is that these ladies are artists who make, like I said, fangirling of earrings. All the earrings, all the dangly earrings, all the beaded, textured, everything you can think about, like just make you happy. Like here's one of Brooke's here, one of my favorites.
Oh yes, I remember those.
I'm obsessed with them. I'm so mad you got those instead of me.
So clearly I have a particular, like if I see something that I love there, it has to speak to me. And that's something I've learned how to do. And I think if you create art, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes you have to focus that sound. You get so much input because we have so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
You have to focus. And how do you do that, I suppose, is one of the questions. So let me talk about the art part of your job. And then we'll get into the other jobs and we'll tie it in at the end. So now, why art, and why in particular adornment? So jewelry, and who wants to go first? Go for it. So why make beautiful things like highly polished polymer clay that doesn't feel like anything on my ears?
They're gorgeous, by the way.
They are
very nice.
That reminds me of happy squids.
They're like super amazing. Like the movement in them is amazing.
The movement, and each of you, you have your moth wings,
yeah.
which is a new shape for you, Brooke. And I see the danglers on you, Alice. So why art?
Yeah, I just got these in the mail today, so I had to wear them.
Very nice.
So excessive.
Yeah. Love them.
They're insane. So I was like, these have to be memorialized forever.
Your hair, because you have such beautiful curly dark hair.
Got to stand out somehow.
Well, hey, I think that's an important thing. So why jewelry? Why in particular such intricate for both of you? I mean, we've got Brooke's here, and we've got one of Alison's that I have here. Look at the intricacy. We have.
Oh, and they like match together too, kind of with the teals and things. That's nice. Good
We're
job.
just a themed character at this
Great
point. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. You can go. I'll let you go.
Thanks, Alison. I don't know why. That's a really good question. I don't know how it evolved for me, honestly, because I've always done art, but it's never. I didn't start making like jewelry until a few years ago, and I know that Alison also is a beader, clearly, and that we've both been doing that for a long time, but it never really evolved into jewelry for me until just a few years ago. Like I'd say probably just before the pandemic, like a year or so before the pandemic. But before that, I was doing sculpture and video, and I was, performing live video on different events and stuff like that. So I don't really know why earrings, but art, I think for me is just like a meditation kind of. And I can say things with art, whatever, medium I'm choosing to do that in, that I can't say any other way. It's just the best translation. I don't know if that really makes a lot of sense to people, but that's the best way that I could describe it, I think. Yeah.
What do you think about that, Alison? For you, is it a similar type vein? I have a thought on that, but I'm curious as to you.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up like the ultimate art kid. Like my mom converted our basement, which was like an entire floor basically, into like a craft she did scrapbooking and sewing and everything. So we literally had an entire tiny like Hobby Lobby in our basement. So like anything you wanted, there was a product in the basement to do something out of. And then I think moving into like jewelry and or like trinkety kind of things was just kind of like, you know, you try out like those like pony bead lizard keychains that you know everyone makes and they're like 8 years old, like those kind of like trinkety objects. And then I moved in, I was like, I've done a lot of like painting and like watercoloring for like fun. And a lot of that is very like, I had to leave it at home. And I had a job for 5 years where I could bring something to do during the downtime because it was a night job. And the easiest thing to do was bring beads with me in just like a little tiny box versus like bring a cup of water and my nice brushes and paint or like whatever else I was working on. Yeah. And then earrings, I wear earrings more than I wear. Like I wear rings and necklaces, but I don't take them off, but I change my earrings every day. So it kind of was like well, you know, if everyone else hates it, I'm going to make it for me. And then here we are with 4 million earrings later.
Right.
So I didn't know anything else. It just kind of evolved out of like convenience, I guess.
Right. Necessity is the mother of invention. And then you realize you love something you didn't know because you have the freedom to create. And so, you know, so thank you to each of you for that, because, you know, for Brooke, it's the meditation I get very much. I have like Alison, I've always been encouraged to create. My father made knives. He made out of everything, antlers, turquoise. He would sketch them. He did stained glass, but I grew up finishing drywall. So I know how to make a wall look like perfect. I know how to mix mud. I know how to make it look great. I can do a ceiling and your joint, everything's going to look great. I've done that since I can remember. So working with my hands has been important. And that meditation, I particularly, for me, it's a mental health exercise as much as anything. And I've always sketched. I wrote poetry. I would doodle, but I didn't do until I had a surgery and I couldn't focus that energy that I had.
Right.
I mean, I was in, I think, ankle, knee, and then 2 knee from July, August, September in 1 year. And so I was like, I've always wanted to, I'm just going to fucking do it. Excuse my French. There we go. There's the first blooper. So never mind. So
never mind.
Yeah, this is one in process, but to me,
I'm going to write this down. I'm going to take a tally.
It's a good idea. I think the meditation's important, but also, as Alison said, the creative freedom that you had encouragement to do it and that there was something available. That's something that's not always encouraged in the school system. And as an educator, I have gone through this conversation about removing things that are really important to me, which is creating and then athletics and movement and physical education. So it's awesome that you had that support. Would each of you say you had support growing up to create?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think every parent, you know, has like that dream where, you know, you're going to have that cute, nice career that's going to get you that 401k so you can retire kind of thing. But I think my parents were never like, no, you can't be an art kid. Like they put me in all the sports, you know, that you do with your entire class growing up every year, like all the t-ball, and I hated it. I hated I can't do it. No. Can't do softball, can't do t-ball, can't do team sports. And so it's kind of, and like I was an only child, so I like grew up to be like a loner anyway. So it's like, of course I'm just gonna like hang inside and be like a total like book nerd that just like makes jewelry in the corner. Like there was no other way for me to do this.
Well, but what you're creating and what you're creating is it's a product. I would imagine. Is it a product of your ideas? What inspire? And I'm going to go into the kind of a question that isn't necessarily in order, ladies. But what is it that inspires you to create?
Well, I think I've always had. This is kind of a strange thing. It kind of ties into the whole beadwork thing with traditional beadwork, where in a lot of indigenous cultures and in Métis culture, it's used as like number one, they call it medicine, which is like a healing practice. It's also, a lot of it is about storytelling. And I always had, like when I did artwork, I always had characters that would come out. And so, and not necessarily like characters in a book, but like, you know, some of my work, you know, I have the spears are a character, the clouds are a character. And they kind of just, yeah, those are kind of what inspire me. Like they come and I just sort of like give them their voice, I guess, in a way. Like it's sort of, so that to me is how I get inspired by all kinds of things, and then my brain kind of filters it through and it spits it out in this character that I end up working with for some time. Like for a long time in school, it was logs. Like I drew all kinds of different stumps and logs, and then they started adding on to them like weird stuff. Like they would get keyholes, and then they would get like ribbons and all these other kinds of things that would go with them. So, I don't really know how to interpret that other than I know what they mean, but I can't describe them. They're just sort of like characters, right? And they tell their own story.
Sort of like they just sort of happen.
Yeah.
Now, and Alison, I don't know if you have a similar type experience about what inspires you, but I know that what I've had to learn is to not force sometimes with artwork. And that's one thing that's difficult when I get a commission. Someone says they want something in a box, and I'm like, God, no, boxes. I can't, no, because that is not a box. So, So for you, Alison, so I hear Brooke saying that it sort of is something that's been there, but you're listening and trying to interact with it in your head and in your feeling, the things that we can't necessarily describe. How about you, as far as your inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, kind of slightly like creativity inspiration wise, like I feel like schools, they give you crayons, you have the coloring books, everyone, like, kids learn to draw pictures and like stick figures and everything. And I always have these like things in my head that look great, but I physically cannot draw. I am the worst drawer on the face of the earth, but I can make cool shit out of beads, like, or clay, or combine it in a weird way that works, kind of thing. Or, I mean, I was like reasonably good at painting and like a casual, like my own wall kind of thing. So it's like, I kind of had to figure out outside of the classic, like your elementary school art teacher gave you crayons and a 8.5 by 11 sheet of construction paper, and I kind of had to like go out of the box for that. But it's just kind of been kind of part of like what I do for like my own earrings is like, I try to make stuff that doesn't exist. I mean, Brooke, your stuff is the same, and like Liv, your paintings are the same. Like you can't go to Target and find these like cloud earrings or these abstract paintings or like whatever. So it's kind of like, okay, well, like I have this idea that I want this like, pink pair of earrings with like a moon on it or whatever. And it's like, well, it doesn't exist.
So you make it.
Yeah. And then you kind of, you do one thing, or you're like, okay, well, I need to match this purple dress I have. Let's see what comes out of my brain. And then you can kind of just spiral from there versus like looking at things that already exist. It's like literally just those weird ideas in your head and being like, I've got 6 beads and a piece of thread. Let's see how I can like make it work, kind of thing. Like you got to do it.
You never know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah.
Totally winging it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me too, just briefly, I think I was like inspired by other craft like supplies. Like I wanted like things to bead around, and I couldn't find what I wanted, so I just thought I'm just gonna make my own, right? Like and
that's
or
how
I
started clay.
Yeah, and then I see a trend or something, and I think, oh, those are really cool. Like I like these moth things that's going around, right? Like I really like that. But I don't want to do it
to do with it. But I have this twist on it that is very personal.
Yeah.
Very personal.
So you just kind of decide you want to make it your own, and so you take that, the moth, and then you just do something, interpret it in your own way so that it's completely different from what you see around. There's thousands of pairs of moth earrings, and all of them gorgeous, but you kind of want to put your own thing on it, you know what I mean? And so that's what you do.
Like I started clay because I live in an apartment and I can't do metalsmithing like safely. I don't have the ventilation, I don't have the space.
Right.
But I wanted to make like tops that I could put beads onto rather than just having only beads. And ironically, that's what I started as. Couldn't do it because I was like brand new and terrible.
Yeah.
So it took me like 1.5 years of getting good at clay to get to that point where I can combine it now. But it's like, it literally was like, okay, well, I can't have a kiln, so I can't like melt glass in the back. Like I can't like metalsmith and like solder things together. So like, how am I going to get this look that I want? with something I can actually like maintain in my apartment safely, or like within budget, or like whatever the issues are.
Right. And like Liv was saying, like necessity is the mother of invention. You just figure out what you can work with, and then you just go from there, right? Like I did the same thing with the jewelry, with the metalsmithing. I took lots of courses, and I mean casting jewelry and stuff, but I mean you can't, who's got the facility for that?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even have a garage, so it's like there's no way. And I have myself, my partner, and 3 animals. I can't start smoking jewelry in the underneath the stove where the hood fan is. That's not safe. So you kind of just work with what you have.
Yeah,
make it work.
And I think that sort of takes us into, and if I said this earlier, so for those of you watching or listening, so I am preparing for an upcoming show where I'm going to have the city hall in a town of Fishers, in Fishers, Indiana. I've got 2 floors with my sister to fill the space, and I'm in a small place that I rent because my life is busy, so it makes sense. And I've got probably 20 canvases on the other side of this camera, and it looks like someone exploded, like a paint palette exploded, which isn't always bad. But I think that if we're transitioning here, so what I'm hearing is that the creativity can sometimes be incredibly focused for the good when there are parameters and there are restrictions that maybe you don't optimally want to have. And that brings me into COVID. And some of the questions that I had suggested for us here is, what are maybe 2 to 3 things each of you had learned about your own art because the pandemic decided to just bear down and restrict even further what you guys just talked about?
For me, a lot of it was a supply issue, which I'm sure, Brooke, you also have. And well, you have day to day because Canada sucks for clay. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Literally, I mean, on a good day, you guys have nothing. I know sorry.
It's terrible. No, so true.
Yeah, it puts you in a spot where you're like, okay, so everything, I can't go to Hobby Lobby, like everything's closed. You're locked in your house or whatever, or. Yeah. And you can't order online because companies aren't producing anything. And you're like, okay, so I've got this weird color of clay and I've got this weird shade of beads and I have to make it work. Like, how am I going to do this? So for me, I got forced to do a lot more creative things. And that's also when I started doing a lot of the combining with clay, because it was just kind of like, well, I got nothing but time to mess around. So like, let's see what we can do. Like, I didn't have anyone like begging for something I'd already made. Like I was like, I have to force orders to get a paycheck. So like, let's do something new and interesting that I also don't hate.
Right.
But I can't order anything new. You're literally forced to use what you have, which is like the ultimate. I should do that more. But like
scraps,
if you're, if it's like, you have an idea in your head that you need pink and you don't have anything that could even make pink.
What do you do?
What are you going to do? And then that throws your entire brain off and you have to like totally reset. And so
you have that like, oh my gosh. And I've had it where I've mixed a color of paint that I absolutely adore. And I don't remember what the hell I did.
Nope.
But I love
all the
it.
time.
And then I'm like, I better use it the right way. And so for example here, because you guys know that and seriously, so I'm drawn to each of your artwork in a different way. And one of the main reasons I am, before we get to Brooke on answering the COVID question, is I've had a lot of surgeries. And as you may know, I've had surgery on my cranium. I've had injuries. And so clay is super lightweight and easy for me to wear.
Right.
So, and over pandemic, I watched as like for Alison, we had the basic, which I love these. Then we go to mixing, the stained glass, and then we're getting into the beading and then the fringe. And then with Brooke, we started also, we had the fringe, and then I started seeing a lot of Brooke with you starting to put different like multiple
printed
and then adding the flourishes. So it seemed to me that it's almost as while that restriction was there for each of you, you're able to take something that was not optimal. And as my mother always said, do what you can with what you have and try to grow it and flourish where you had those restrictions. So Alison's like, look, you have this color you want. What do you do with it? So Brooke, if you're learning, what are the couple things, the pandemic and those restrictions, how did it help your creative outlet?
I think it kind of forced me to focus a lot, like because I have another job, which we'll talk about after. Because I wasn't doing that, I all of a sudden had all this spare time, and I had all these plans before that happened, before the COVID came in, that I was going to do this, and I had goals set to, evolve the business and do that. But all of a sudden I had all that time, and I just basically said, okay, I'm just going to do it. And so in a way, I feel like it was a blessing. Even within the hardship that it was a kind of freedom to just sort of like, I don't really have anything to lose here, and I don't have any restrictions or feel like restricted in any way. Even if I mess up, it's still good, like, because I have this freedom to do it, I might as well just experiment. So it was this sort of open forum to just sort of do whatever I wanted, and to really let go of like the structure of having to do things because I had so little time. So letting go of, restricting myself from being creative and to exploring things is really a thing that happened. And also confidence. I think when you have the time to really focus on things, and you sort of slowly over a few period of like a few weeks, you see things developing. Instead of having to stop and start all the time with like job, and then you only have 3 hours a week to do something or create something, it feels, you get really stopped and start and stop and start. So you feel really like, I don't really see anything happening, and it can be a little bit sad, actually.
Yeah, sad. It's like, oh.
Yeah. But then you get, you have an opportunity to just sort of like keep growing and really develop it. And so you have, it's a confidence builder, I think, because you see that it's happening, and it's great to see that happening, because you're often in our situation. I mean, I know for me, but probably shouldn't speak for you guys, but it feels like you're never going to be able to achieve those goals, or maybe are you good enough to achieve those goals, and like, are you doing this like for real, or what are you doing? So it kind of distills all of that into a very real place that you can kind of relate with a bit better, closer. Yeah. So it was really positive.
Yeah. And that's, so thank you to both of you, because that's not always an easy question to answer.
No.
So what I heard is we touched upon limited resources. We touched upon having to dig a little deeper. And why is it that the two of you, I've seen growth in your businesses, at least on Instagram, and I would imagine that's starting to compound, that you chose to take a difficult situation and chose to try to turn it into a positive. Each of you said that. You're like, so that gets to fundamentals of, there's some underlying confidence there in your own skills and abilities, and the fact that would you both say that you're driven to do the artwork without, we'll talk about the other jobs, because we got to pay our bills, we got to pay student loans, right? But would you, at least I know that I am driven to create, to be colorful, and to share it. If I don't do that, I'm a very unhappy person.
Agree.
I had to learn how to accept that, because it was always there, but I had a lot, my type of input was performance. I had to be the top of everything. That was something that drove me for a long time, until I said, life has given me these cards. Let's just do more what I want and celebrate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like a lot of it, I think everyone kind of has like that trope, like even if you have a business or not, where it's like, if I didn't have to go to work 40 hours a week, or like, if I didn't have like kids, or like whatever your responsibilities are, like, I'd like work out all the time. My house would be so clean. I'd have all these cool hobbies, like blah, blah, blah. And then it kind of like was like, oh shit, like we have the time now. Like, like my job went remote because I was able to go remote. I wasn't furloughed. So I was still able to exist at home, but that cuts out the commute time. That cuts out, like you didn't go to the grocery store. There was no like random Target trips. So like, shut the work laptop, and I just immediately would start working on stuff. And it's partly because it's like a hobby, like, and then also it's a business at the same time. So it kind of merged into like, you always have those dreams where it's like, if I had free time, I'd totally learn this cool skill. And then it was here, and I was like, oh, okay, well, how are we going to,
oh my gosh,
do this? Like, let's just go, I guess.
I don't have any more excuses. I got to get to it.
Yeah. And so I kind of had to reevaluate what those like pipe dream sort of things were as well. And I mean, pandemic or not, I feel like you could probably get the same thing if you just like quit your job suddenly, but like most people don't have the luxury of risking quitting their job with like insurance and living and
Yeah.
staying.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now I'm going to Brooke, I want to give you an opportunity to say, I'd ask the question, do you feel driven to create art? And you have a degree in art.
Yeah.
And so my assumption is that you feel driven to do it, but many artists have to also have another job, and all three of us do. Now I came to art late, but I'm kind of on the flip side. So Brooke, you're driven to do art because it just is? Yes, no?
I've always said that it's not really a choice for me. I kind of have to. And it's not like gun to my head, like horrible situation
Right.
to have to feel like that with art. It's not like, it's just something I've always done, something I've always I need to do. So, and that changed over time. The mediums changed, or sometimes it's the project that you're working on that dictates what you're doing. Like sometimes it's beads, sometimes it's clay, sometimes it's sculpture. Sometimes it depends on the project, but I feel like it's part of who I am. I'm not happy if I'm not doing it. And so, and after like I graduated from art college in 1999. So geez, that's a long time. And I've continued to kind of do that, but I also had to have a sit down with myself at some point and say, if I want to do art, I want to make time and money, then I have to do something. So I had to go and get a real job so that I could feed the beast. You know what I mean? Because you can't do art if you have no money, right? It's expensive, right? It's costly, and you want to do it the way you want with the materials that you want. So you have to kind of like figure out how you're going to make that happen. Right. So it was one of those things where it was like the balance, like Liv, you're always talking about balanced, and it's sort of like, so if I do this, I can fund the beast, which is the art project and that part of me. So you kind of, you have to sort of do that until hopefully you kind of do this until you're more doing the artwork and less doing the other stuff. And that's kind of where I am now. Like I'm trying to do that.
Your social medias, on some of the posts that you have. And so I'm going to give equal time to each of you. So these are Alison's, by the way, those of you watching. So I'm going to switch here to some of my favorites of Brooke's. But I think that, someone asked me the other day, I was at a conference and I was talking to the keynote speaker, and she's like, Olivia, do you think that you're worth being able to spend time to do what you love for what you have left in your life? And I was like, damn, that's just bring it.
Sheesh, that's some heat.
Like, okay, because there's moments when I've told people, like, if I went to college for a very long time, and I want to talk about each of you if you want to share your full-time funding the beast jobs. But, for me, I went to school to do one thing, and then I had surgeries, and then I ended up being a teacher and a personal trainer, and then I went to grad school and I was working in business, and it just one thing after the other. So yes, I'm full-time attorney, but I also teach at a college, but I love painting. And if I didn't have all that debt, I probably would have a studio and paint all the time because the ideas are just constant.
Yeah.
So then how do, so each of you, so Alison, what are the other jobs? And by the way, so these are Brooke's, one of my favorites, the lemons.
The lemons, of course.
My sister's not
the lemons.
So I took a really long time to graduate college. I kept changing my major. I failed some classes because I just didn't care, because I hated my major. Like, it was just one of those like classic, like, you're smart in elementary school and then you get to like college and you're like, oh God, I'm not smart anymore. But you're still coasting like you're a smart third grader. So I didn't graduate college until 2018, and I graduated high school in 2011. So it took me 7 years to get out of college. So by the time I graduated, I was 26 or about to be 26. And I was like, I have to get insurance. There's no, like, I'm off my parents. Like, I'm desperate. And so I think if I had graduated earlier, I would have probably risked doing jewelry things for a couple of years at least, coasting on your parents' coattails kind of things. But so I had to get a job. So I work for the university here in just a desk job. I don't hate it, but it's a desk job. The worst nightmare for me is dying at a desk job.
Yeah.
I think I think because like I always wanted to be a teacher when I was growing up. Like that was my thing, because when you're like a third grader or whatever, you want to be like an astronaut, you want to be a doctor, you want to be like these cool jobs, because you don't really ever hear about anyone who's like, I'm a full-time artist and I own a home. Like it's always like the starving artist trope of just like,
there's no
like
section in the paper where you
Nope.
can go to like find artist
Nope.
jobs. Like,
No.
oh, artists wanted. It's like,
No.
that doesn't happen. It's not a thing. It's not a thing.
Which it's
Never.
it's becoming more of a thing now,
Yeah,
but like when we were kids, like
no,
not a thing even remotely, or like, like that crazy like weirdo in the backyard kind of thing. Like that's not acceptable thing.
No grown-ups I knew were artists. Like
No.
I don't think I knew one single adult who was an artist. Like that was their job.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's not a thing.
But so like and I think that's why I struggled so hard to find a major that I liked, because I got into like the student teaching part of, I was 3 years into, I was almost ready to graduate, and they put me in the classroom, and I was like, I mean, I don't hate it, but I can't do this for 30 years. I can't do the testing. I can't, this isn't for me after all. And that was my entire life dream. And then it was like, well, I've already wasted 4 years at a university, like full tuition, not like community college like I should have done. So it's like, well, I can't get like, and then at university, if you get an art degree, at least at my school, you actually have to be good. And I'm not a good drawer. So I would have legitimately failed an art degree.
And you weren't willing to take that risk after the disaster that was there.
Like I was already 4 years in. I was like, whatever it takes, get me out. I like psychology. I wouldn't be offended by like having a psych related fallback job, as an adult or whatever. Like I'm totally not an adult now, but it kind of was like and then I kind of just kept my college job, which is working in a coffee shop. So I manage a coffee shop now, and I still work there on the weekends. So desk job 9 to 5, and then coffee on the weekends, and then I literally come home still in my work pants and start like beating away until like 3 a.m. It's terrible, but it's literally a hobby. It's what I do. Like that's a day off. If I'm just beating all day, that is a day off.
It's a day I look forward to, for sure.
Yeah. Like,
I see that in each of you when you post about that, so like, I've got a very full-time job being an attorney, and I worked for it. I'm where I wanted to be. I'm in the job. I'm very blessed with that. I still teach because I love teaching, and teaching helps pay off the school loans. It helps fund the art that I want to do until, as I'm learning and exploring this business. So Brooke, if you would like to share, what is your funding the beast business? You in healthcare? Am I correct in that one?
Yeah.
Can you help?
So it's kind of a complete like 180 from the art thing, right? So at some point I sat down with myself and said, okay, what do I want the next 10 years to be like, right? And I made a short list of like things I might like to do. One of them was a vet tech. One of them was X-ray. And I decided to do X-ray because I don't think I can work with animals that were injured all the time. That was, for some reason, it's easier for me to work with injured people than it is with animals. I don't know what that says about me, but
animals are cuter.
That's the truth of how that decision happened. And so I did the X-ray program. It was a 3-year program. And then after that, I did a specialty. I met some people in the industry of imaging, diagnostic imaging, and I met this really cool guy, and he was like, you should totally do ultrasound, like you'd be awesome. So I said, sure. And I went and applied for the program, got in and did another year of that. Now I do that 3 days a week. Until very recently, it was 4 days a week, but now I do it 3 days a week. And I've been doing this for, I think this is my 13th year. And I love it. It's very creative in its own way.
I was going to say, it makes sense. Yeah. I just had an ultrasound done. So I'm sitting there looking and making sure, and she's like doing all of her thing, and she can identify everything. And I thought about, this is the artistic part of doing medical job,
Yeah. Well, it's like pattern recognition too, right? So that is something like spatial reality is pattern recognition. So it kind of translates over, and X-ray is like photography. A lot of it, like when I first started doing it, we actually developed our own film. There was no digital at that point, so it was all film. You put it into a processor, you have to set all the parameters correctly to get the right exposure. So that was, it kind of made sense to me. in that way. And sometimes I don't really realize that until after that I've made these decisions, and they're all kind of like, there's a timeline that's reasonable and, linear, but I don't realize it at the time until I look back. But so it's a great job. I learn something new every day, but I am like Alison, I get home and I'm in the midst of the beadwork. I just like come in like a bull in a china shop right into the fray, and like that's it. And you don't see me for another hours when I have the time. So yeah.
When inspiration strikes. So then let me transition here, as we've got about 20 minutes or so. Let me transition into each of you you have your the things that fund the beast and the side jobs, and I do too. And we all have the goals that we're working towards. What have you learned about being your own business owner? So we have Spitfire July is Alison's business, and we have Twig and Antler for Brooke. And you each have websites. You each do a little bit different with them. Can you talk a little bit more about your growth pattern, what you've learned, and let's say in the last year, about promoting yourself through social media and the business? Some tips for individuals listening or watching.
It sounds so cliche when you hear it, but I literally I had to turn off, because my stuff is entirely Instagram based, which I understand a lot of businesses are more brick and mortar or not quite so Instagram based, but I had to turn off comment notifications, like notifications. I had to stop checking how many followers I lost every single night, how many people were bots, comparing to well, my friend that, she got 4,000 likes and I got 10. It was literally paralyzing. So I had to turn all those notifications off, which I think everyone should do, business or not. I don't think that's healthy. And then I had to literally just 100% stop giving a shit what other people wanted.
We're thinking about it. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. I had to literally forget what I made last week that sold or whatever, and be well, someone bought a dark blue earring last week, so I definitely have to make 10 more this week. And that's the only way I was going to be successful, is if I just repeated what was successful one time. Yeah. And so I had to turn all those notifications off and forget what I did and just wing it entirely. And then that also in turn made me more confident, which I did help with the Instagram side of it, because then doing stories or whatever, it's not the hey, hope you guys like me. It kind of was a hey, I like what I make, I hope you like it too, because I really fucking love it. Yeah, literally just straight up owning it. And then that in turn, not everyone's gonna like your stuff. It's fine. They can follow you and hate everything you make. It's just not their style.
Comments I get on my artwork, and I'm like, dude, I am looking at you in my face. You want to be a little? Yeah. Did anybody teach you manners?
Yeah, it's that's cool. You don't. Not everyone's a customer. You can just enjoy it, enjoy art, whatever. My earrings can be too big for you or whatever, and that's fine. But I like it, so fuck you, basically.
And that's basically what it's about. I mean, why are you doing this? You're not doing that. You're doing it for other people, but you're also doing it. You have to do it because you want to do it your way.
Yeah. If I'm
you can't seek your balance, because you are your own. No. You're your own person, and at the end of the day, you're with you at all times. Mm-hmm. And that's something I think we have our own journeys for. And so Brooke, what about you? What about your business? I mean, I saw you nodding and saying yes about turning off the input from outside. What other thoughts from a business perspective?
Over the last year, I think one thing I really realized is that I was kind of doing the internet wrong. I was doing it wrong. I was focusing on completely the wrong things and letting those things kind of get into my head and into my psyche and trying to twist me around to do things to appreciate what other people are doing and still not want to make things that way is not a source of anxiety for me anymore. I realized that I can appreciate what everyone else is doing and really admire it and be oh yeah, that's great, but I don't have to feel bad about myself because I'm not doing it that way. So once I freed myself from that cage, it was okay, and also I think as a business owner, it takes a while sometimes to figure out who my customer is, who am I doing this for? And what I realized was that my customer is me ultimately. So I have to I have to find and connect with those people. And in all honesty, Instagram is not a great way for me to do that. I feel like it's a great way to funnel people towards work that might just happen to be around, or to kind of like as an art showcase maybe. But my customer is kind of like probably not doing reels and spending 8 hours a day doing that stuff. So it's kind of, you kind of have to sort of wade through some of the stuff to kind of get to the people and the place where you want to be on there. And it can take a while, and it can be a little discouraging too, because there's a lot going on the internet, and there's a lot going on Instagram that is not necessarily relevant to what you're doing. And so you kind of have to try to figure out,
it's a balance. But, this is what I'm doing and I want to be doing.
Right. And the way part of the way to do that is to find people like you guys, right? So for that reason, it's great, because I've found tons of community. I've found tons of like community and people who are also customers, and I've found people that I buy from, and it goes round, right? So, but it can be very overwhelming. So I agree with Alison about the having to sort of like limit your usage and trying to keep up as one person with all the stuff, plus DMs and all this other stuff. I mean, you'll make yourself nuts, honestly. Like,
well, it's a dynamic where, like, I've given my brand a name. Like, it's not just the Alison Stastny brand, but like I've given it a name, but it's me. Like, I am my brand. So like,
yeah.
And a big thing these last couple of years has been a lot of like political hot topics or whatever, like pandemic aside, everything else going on.
Yeah.
So like people are like, keep your politics out of your business. It's like, I don't think you understand. I am my business. Yeah. So like, what I want to make is my business. Like the weird shit that's in my brain is my business. My morals and what, like, you give me that money and how I spend it in my personal life is my business. Like
that's
it's right. All intertwined. And then kind of like what you were saying, it's a little like niche. I'm sure every type of like small business category or whatever has the same thing, but like in clay, there's like the trope of like everyone makes a white arch earring, and it's like who's imposter syndrome, whatever. So like for me, like, and you guys too, like we all like neon giant weird shit. Like the bigger the bigger the better. Yeah. Like if it's insane, I want it.
Yeah.
You see all these people, that, and minimalism is such a big thing too. That's a really popular category in jewelry, and I'm sure art, like paintings as well, is like
I'm not a minimalist.
Making these like beautiful little tiny, delicate, like neutral colored earrings. I'm like, I love it. It's not for me, and I respect your work, but like you have to dig out your own customers that like your work. And it took me a good year to get from like 400, which was my starting, because I switched my personal account to my business account. So like 0 for me was 400. It took me a year and a half to get from 400 to 1,000 followers.
Oh God.
It took that long to dig out people who actually like wanted, like found me organically or through like, hashtags, whatever, but not in real life friends that liked what I was doing and wanted to see more, because I was making such like interesting like things compared to what you see at Target, or what's the stereotype, like the white arch kind of
right. And what I appreciate about each of your artwork, and that's we've talked about staying true to yourself. We've talked about what motivates us to do artwork. Each of you produces amazing quality, and that's something you've talked about. But then, because I am me, and I was raised by my mother and father, it's quality is what I look for. So I am in, and I've seen this for each of you about paying for quality, because you're paying for everything that goes into it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure each of you may have had challenges from persons about, I can go buy the white arch for like $5 at Target. Yeah, girlfriend, but it's going to snag on your clothing because it hasn't been sanded, buffed. It has no character to it. So Brooke, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that you put on the back of yours, it's leather, it's suede, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
How's that for you? I mean, because quality is evident, and that's why I purchase from each of you and support your artwork, because I can tell you that time that I put into mine, because every single stroke of my painting has been thought out because it has a purpose and an emotion behind it.
Right. I think the quality issue is it's two things. It's a personal attention to detail, like being an A-type personality, you know. OCD, you're going to do that for sure. But also it's about a respect for the finishing of a thing that's not just a white arch, you know.
Yeah.
It's more about this is a piece of work that I care about, that I've spent a lot of time, energy, and money and effort to get here to make, and I'm not going to let go of it until it is exactly perfect. And that sets you apart from a lot of other makers, I think. Some intentionally, and some not just knowing, you know, how to do properly. And I was there at one point as well. But I think it's a respect issue. Like, everything that I make is so important and so special to me, and I try to make it as unique as possible, that why would I leave it, you know, in an unfinished condition without all of the, you know, the best backing, the best beads, the best findings, the best everything. You know what I mean? Like, you want it to be up here. And so if you want to do that, you have to pay attention to those little details. It's not always about, it's so many things. It's design, it's, you know, quality of the materials you're using, it's finishing, it's all that stuff.
It's producing something, what I'm hearing, that reflects you as a person.
Right. I care about it. And if it's a professional thing, and if it's a business, and, you know, it can be fun and it can be wacky and we can all, you know, whatever, it can be like super ultra weird, but it has to be finished, you know, has to have like, that level.
Yeah. I mean, there's merits for learning your process. I mean, the first few earrings I made, they were messier, but I gave it my best shot to like sand the edges. It's just, you know, like a skill that you learn to get better at. Yeah. That obviously I'm much more proud of stuff I'm making now than before, but I gave it a good shot before. But also I think it's like disrespectful. This is an argument I have with a lot of people. I think it's just straight disrespectful to be like, I don't need to, we'll leave the bubbles and the sanding. I think it's cute. It's like, it's not, you should at least try.
It's an excuse.
Like, because you should know better, because you like, you learn how to touch whatever your medium is and how to handle it. So like, you learn how to like not leave fingerprints after handling it so long. Like, I think it's disrespectful to ask people for their hard-earned money and be like, well, I didn't care, I just stuck my thumb right.
Exactly.
Like, that's extremely rude to be like, but you should definitely give me $80 for this. No,
I mean, and that's quality. And that I can tell you, at least from my perspective, and, you know, every time I wear, one of the two of you, I wear a pair of your earrings, doesn't matter which one of you, somebody says something about it. And I'm like, of course, as you both know, I'm trying to push people to it, because people I know who want quality, I know that they enjoy it. And what I find is that the individual, I wear it because I love it, because it's a reflection of me. And I find that the persons I interact with feel more comfortable and confident. Like, I could never wear something that bright and big. And I'm like, really? Because you can do whatever you want. And then it happened with somebody recently at work, and one day she came by and showed me that she had something new and fun, and that made me happy, because it was a matter of her choosing her own confidence. So that's why it's not about just products or just about this. It's about digging deep to find the things that motivate each of us, so that we're expressing who we are for the time that we have. And I mean, that really gets into my purpose for why I'm doing Liv Balanced, why I'm having you here. And as we get down to sort of winding down this last few minutes, I suppose one of my questions is, if you could talk to your younger self, and Alison, I'm not gonna lie, because I know that you're the youngest, but we all have a younger self. Let's say our younger creative self. What piece of advice would you say to yourself, that if you have a young man or woman who's watching and wants to create, what would you tell them right now, who maybe is at the beginning of their journey?
I think mine is so still attached to what I was talking about earlier with like, okay, like, yeah, I went to university. Like, I'm glad I have a degree. It does set you up for a lot of things that not having any type of degree or certificate gets you. But like, you don't have to have a career out of it. And so like, everyone asks you, like, what are you going to do? What's your career? How are you going to retire in 40 years? Like, what's your 40-year plan. It's like, I'm 18, please leave me alone. Like,
Yeah.
so
Give me a
I
break.
feel like I would
Holy.
almost, and having you know, like growing up being like, I want to be a teacher, no problem with that. But like talking to your advisor, like in college and being like, I hate what I'm doing, and having them be like, well, you're homeless then. Like, what? Like, I don't have to have a career plan. Like, it's okay to
No,
wing
it's
it.
fine.
And like, you can, I mean, I genuinely do enjoy my full-time job. I cannot live at a desk job for 40 years.
Yeah.
But it's okay to have a burner job that pays the bill
Totally fine.
and then go home. Like, I'm
Yeah.
happy being, I mean, it's the trope of the starving artist. I'm happy paying my rent, you know, being able to go out to eat a couple times and then that's it, and just buy art supplies. I don't need a mansion, you know, I don't need, it's fine. As long as I can do my hobby and I have the insurance or whatever that I need, that's fine. And people don't, and I mean, that's a whole education trope I'm not even going to go into, but like, it's okay to not have a career plan when you're 17 or 18, or even the second you graduate when you're like 21, 22. It's okay to not have the next 40 years planned out exactly.
I've
and like
noticed that, yeah, with
and getting a promotion, and you know, like, that's great if people want to have that, but not every kid is like that. And then it makes you feel like you're a failure, because like all my friends are, I have one art kid friend, and then the rest of mine are all like, I want to be a doctor, I'm an engineer, and they're doing amazing. That is their goal. Like,
yeah.
But then like, I'm sitting there like, I make earrings, you know, like, so it's kind of like, I've learned now to not be like ashamed of it or whatever, but it is kind of awkward being like, yeah, I don't want to do this for a living. Like, I'm just here to pay the bills.
And that's totally okay. And and I think I've seen that as an educator. I will be talking to students and I'm teaching how to teach a class, and they are petrified. And I'm like, you have your whole life ahead of you. This is the time. If
Just
you
take a breath.
You're
good.
So yeah,
you're really good.
What would you say to your younger self? What would your advice be? Or to those listening and watching who are like, who are these ladies and they're making
I thought about this question heavy. I did read it, and I thought, oh my God, like, what would I say? Would I even like myself? Would I even like myself? Probably not. Would I trust myself? Definitely not. I think I would say, though, is I don't really regret anything. And when I get asked questions like that, I often, my brain goes to regret, right? Like, what do I regret that I wish I would tell myself to be careful about, to not do? But I don't like to live in that question that way. I would say, don't shy away from the hardest things, because the hardest things, if you can get through them, are often the situations where you learn the most and you gain the most and you benefit the most, even if it was really freaking hard. And even that meaning, like, if it's really hard for your freaking ego to get through that, you got to do that. That's something you got to do. So just prepare yourself to like do that, get through it, because on the other side of that, you realize a lot of things look a lot different, and you see the benefit of like, or the futility of like trying to fight against that thing. So the lessons you learn out of things that are difficult are way more worth it than fighting it. Just, you know, and also to Alison's like point and question, you don't have to do things traditionally. That doesn't make you more of a valid human being, or your experience or how you want to do things more or less valid than anyone else. It just means you do things differently, and you'll figure out what you need to be happy, and when you aren't, you'll change it. So change is also always available to you. You don't always have to like be stuck in something just because you know, you're fearful, or because everyone else is doing something that, you know, is different from you, or you don't want to do that way. That's, you know, you can still be happy and have everything you need.
Change is inevitable, and I heard that from the keynote speaker at the conference that I was at last weekend. She was a hostage in Somalia, and she survived it after 90 days. We had a great conversation, and her message was like, look, change is going to happen. And I think for each of you, at least in what you do that you love doing, do what you love. Who you are is what you should do. That's what my father told me. And so I got both of my parents' statements in this conversation, but who you are is what you should do. Is it's going to happen. Change will happen. And when you're accepting that it's inevitable, that you can grow from it. And so last question, and it's going to give you, I'll give you about 30 seconds each to answer because of course, Liv Balance, I know. So
set my timer.
I know. So what does balancing in the last year or so, we'll give you a time frame. What does balance mean to you? What does balance look like in your life? So Alison, living a balanced,
I had no balance in my life. I am a work addict. I have to be multitasking. Even if it's just doing something for me, I have to be doing 9 things. And so then being able to pause and just do one thing with COVID, I was able to kind of just do that. But now that things are opening back up, I now have to somehow hang out with my friends, pay bills, and make jewelry. And so I have to almost relearn because I had a moment where I figured out my shit. And so now I have to suddenly realize that and fix it. So I'm still learning balance.
Good point. And I think that's the best thing. Still
not be up at 3 a.m. Yeah.
That's okay.
So,
it's a constant tweaking of things, you know?
Yeah. What about you, Brooke? What about your 30 seconds-ish sort of, what does balance look like for you, mean to you? How do you practice it?
How do I practice balance? Drink water, try to sleep. Don't eat junk food too much.
Yeah,
but,
drink water.
Get out in nature, but don't stay too long because it's fucking boring. Come back to urban. And, reaching out to your friends and family and just like always doing the tweaking. If something feels off, what is it? Identify it, deal with that, put it away, move on. And always looking towards like the horizon too, but still enjoying what's happening here. It's very existential, yeah?
I like it though. It's very practical. I mean, as a wellness professional, I'm like, those are practical things. I start my classes with that. So
yeah.
So what, ladies, we're here at an hour. This has been awesome. For those of you listening and watching, I hope that this has been helpful. You've taken some nuggets for yourself. I have to say, ladies, thank you so much. This has been a joy. I mean, we talk about things that are texturized and you can touch them and you feel, and it's real. It's something that you can see and that will get comments and be acknowledged for the work and all of the non-tactile things that you put into it and who you are. So I thank you both for that. And
thanks.
Everybody, go out there and just live balanced, breathe you, take it one day at a time. And that's what we do.